Hello, my friends, my family, my community, my tribe. Welcome to the Hippie Moms Podcast. Oh, yes, here we are. How are you, my friends? Today, we're going to be talking about mom guilt. Yes. Who doesn't need to talk about mom guilt? I feel like mom guilt is, it's synonymous with parenthood, with being a mom. It's something that we experience, and it can really take us down deeply if we are not mindful about it. And so today, what I really want to talk about, what is mom guilt? What are the things that really drive it and create it in our lives so that we can just become aware, right? Because awareness is always the first step to changing anything in our lives. And so if you don't like feeling mom guilt, because let me tell you, I freaking hate feeling mom guilt. And I have so many examples of mom guilt, and I'll share one or two or three, whatever comes up with you, because I want you to know that you're not alone, that every mom, especially living in this day and age, feels it, because the pressures of society, that not only the pressures, the expectations of society, media, our family, our friends, we're always thinking how we should be or what we shouldn't be, or what we should be like or what we shouldn't be like. And we're also, then we're looking at social media, which is basically the collection of perfect moments in the lives of people, right? And some people actually, I love this. More and more people are sharing the not so perfect. And I'll be honest, I have a hard time sharing the not so perfect. I mean, you look at my Instagram page and it's like, all these photos of me and the right lighting and the the right angle. If you notice, I can't even believe I'm saying this. If you notice though, I'm always showing the left side, more of the left side of my face, of my profile, because I've spent years hating the right side of my profile. So maybe I need to just embrace it. It's so embarrassing to share that, but I'm sharing that because, there's parts of us that we want people to think that we have this life that is better than what we actually experience. And what's so important is that we all know that beyond those photos, those are just moments and glimpses of quote unquote perfectionism. It's an illusion. It's a lie. There's no such thing as being perfect. And so, before I had kids, I really thought, oh my gosh, I am going to be the best mom. So, and I'm going to tell you how I got this idea, okay? So when I was about, I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I have a younger brother. He's 5 years younger. And I would spend a lot of time with my brother. My mom started working right after he was born. We were going through some really big financial challenges. My dad partners basically, embezzled millions of dollars out of his company and kind of left us high and dry. And so my mom had to go back and work. And it was really hard. I mean, I remember a time I'm not saying we didn't struggle. We didn't not have food. I mean, there were times we didn't really have the foods that we would normally eat. I never went hungry. So overall, I was really raised in a very privileged home. And I would just want to say that. But I remember us not being able to buy our yearbooks one year, and it was really hard. And my mom shares that story. And so she went back to work. I can't even imagine the mom guilt she had. I mean, here she has 3 kids, right? She has just a new baby. And she struggled, I mean, my mom is one of those people. I look at her now, I'm going to cry. She just made shit happen, and she still does. I didn't know I was going to get so emotional. But I just can't even imagine having to be in her situation. My dad's basically out of work, and she's got to go support us. And she did. And she freaking she took the bull by the horn, and she freaking made it happen. And so going back to my story. So I would spend a lot of time with my little brother. And so there's this store that, this like shopping center that's not too far from where we live. And actually I moved back to my old neighborhood. I was in Arizona for quite some time, and my husband and I moved our family back here just so we could have more support. And this helps with the mom guilt a lot, is when you have the community, and we'll talk about that. So anyway, we go up to this shopping center that's really near our home now, because I literally live like two houses down from my parents. And I remember I was with my little brother, and we were in the Hallmark, and Hallmark has all those little knickknacks and that, like, the glass stuff. And I remember he was there and he was playing with it. And I was like, no, Robert, you don't need to touch anything. Things are to be looked at, not to be touched. And this man comes up to me and he goes, you know what? He's like, you are going to be a really good mom when you grow up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am. And I'm not kidding. From that moment on, I have had this belief that I was going to be the best mom, because I was such a good mom to my little brother. Now, of course, I wasn't responsible for feeding him or specifically breastfeeding him, right? I didn't have to try and like take care of all of his needs. I mean, I just was making sure he was not going to touch anything that could be broken in the store. That was my experience. And I was like, wow, I got that. I got motherhood, in my little like 8, 9-year-old brain. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And when I was on the hunt for my baby daddy, right? Can anyone relate to that? And I shared how I manifested Scott, and I prayed for him, and he was granted to me in an earlier podcast. But I was really in that point where I really wanted to have kids, and I knew I was going to be this most amazing mom. And then you actually have kids. And the thing is, our children are by far our biggest, most incredible teachers. I have learned more from my children than I have from any other person in this world, because our children reflect back to us parts of us that need to be healed. And so now we're going to get into kind of the triggers, right? I've talked a lot about triggers. I talk a lot about triggers because I'm doing a lot of trigger healing. And what I've realized is that when we get triggered, it's actually not the event, circumstance, experience, or person that is actually triggering us. What it's doing is that person, event, circumstance, or experience is actually reminding us of a belief system, a false belief that we've created in our lives, whether we're not good enough. Maybe we were younger and our parents yelled at us for something because that's what their parents did, right? So what happens is when we get triggered, whenever we respond in a way yelling, that's most likely the way that our parents responded. And so what happened in that moment is, don't cry, calm down, don't feel like this, or even a really passive way that our parents try to keep us from feeling our emotions, like redirecting. That was one thing I really started to do when my kids were young, is when my kids were crying, it made me so uncomfortable. Instead of allowing them to process and feel that emotion, I would try to distract them, or I would threaten them. I would say, oh, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to do, if you don't do this, you're not going to get your treat. Or if you don't calm down, you're not going to get that new toy you want. I mean, really, you guys, I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I want to be super real, because this is how we were raised. And maybe you do something different, right? Maybe you completely shut down. Maybe you can't even process your emotions because that's what your parents did. And this is why I think it's so important for us as mothers to wake the F up, because we will continue the cycle of these wounds. And so it's so important for us to heal around the triggers. I'm going to just give a couple things that I'm doing around my triggers that I'm learning from a group that I'm in called Access to Freedom. It's led by Angela Ferrari. She was actually on my podcast, so if you guys check that podcast out. And she's going to be talking about triggers in my the Holistic Mama Summit that's going to be coming up in February. So stay tuned. That is going to be amazing. I have like 30 experts, authors, influencers, naturopathic doctors, and trailblazers of people in the holistic mindset. And So in the work I've done with Angela, she's really helped me realize that when we have triggers, the first thing we have to realize is when we're in the trigger. It's the awareness of the trigger. And even just being in the trigger and like taking a breath and noticing is so huge. Because most of us, when we get triggered, what happens? We just, off we go. Off we go. Now, triggers and mom guilt really come together, and I hope you can see this connection by the end of the podcast, because when we react in a way that is not in alignment with how we want to mother, there's a lot of guilt associated with that, right? So triggers, I really want to talk about triggers first, because or maybe second, but wherever I am in this journey that we're here together, triggers are so important, because if we can really understand our triggers and begin to heal them, we can really do two things. One, we can stop the teaching of these triggers and the teaching of the suppression and oppression of feelings. We can stop that cycle, and then we can help really teach our children emotional intelligence and teach them how to become the parents that we needed, that we want to be, and that they need to be, and then we want them to be for their kids. I hope that made sense. So in the trigger, awareness is the first step. And the second one is, where is it showing up in your body? Most of the time, I feel it in my chest, stomach, or throat. You can also feel it in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, and maybe even pressure in your head. But this is basically, it's energy. Okay, it's energy. So when we were younger and we weren't able to fully express who we are, we were told by our parents, our caregivers, our friends, our people that were around us, society, media, right, that how we were was not right. And so what we had to do is we had to reconstruct who we were by using filters and different stories about ourselves to become someone in the world that was accepted. Right? So a lot of times, here's a really good example. When my eldest, when he whines, it's just like this really high pitched whining. It makes me so uncomfortable. And do you know what I do? I'm working on this. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I'm just going to be real and honest here. You know what I do? Is I respond to him in the high-pitched, annoying voice. I swear, I revert to when I'm like 5 years old. He's like, but mom, and I'm like, but Ryland. I'm like literally making fun of him. Now, that's really effed up. I mean, I really feel like icky about that. But I'm telling you this because I want you to know that the way you respond, even though you feel horrible about it, I want you to know that it's okay. It's not your fault that you respond that way. But it's our responsibility as moms to change it. So it's not your fault. You don't need to feel bad about it. It's because you've been conditioned in a way to respond this way. So when we have that trigger, this is what I've been doing lately. So this morning he did the thing. He wanted orange juice. Now, I don't give my kids a lot of juice. Orange juice is more of like a treat, and I need to really have a whole podcast about feeding your kids and how I've done it, because it's not, for me, it's not perfect. I've had to become less perfect around feeding my kids because I'm really creating a lot of eating disorders within I really saw my kids becoming like disordered with their eating because I was so strict about it. So that's for another podcast. But he wanted orange juice. And I feel like I had to say that because some moms are going to be like, you shouldn't give your kids juice. There's another thing, right? Should I feel guilty about giving my kid orange juice? No, it's my family. It's the way I raise my family, right? I don't really care what anyone else thinks anymore. I mean, I did for a very long time. But I was giving him, he wanted orange juice. And I said, listen, you can have orange juice if you eat all of your breakfast, especially all your protein and all your fat, because that slows metabolism of the juice, as well as, your apple, which is fiber. So anyway, I know I'm still like, trying to be better about how I'm like so specific about what I'm wanting to eat, but he gets hungry. Like if he just has orange juice in the morning, he gets super hungry. Okay, I'm going off on tangents. Let's get back to it. So anyway, I was like, sorry, Rylan, you can't have it because you didn't eat your breakfast. And so no, I mean, you can have it after you eat all your breakfast, but it's like, what happens when you eat sugar, you get super hungry and you get irritable, and he knows this. He knows how he reacts. But mom, I really, he goes off on this high-pitched, freaking annoying voice. So, of course, my first inclination is to yell at him and to tell him to stop, because you know why I wanted him to stop? Because it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. And that's what we need to realize. When our kids make us uncomfortable, it's not their fault. It's our responsibility. It's not our fault that we're getting triggered, but it's our responsibility to not behave or react in a way that is not in alignment with how we want to raise our kids, and really purposefully where we want to be, right? Our intention is, and I don't know about you, but if you're here, my intention is to raise emotionally intelligent, wonderful men, right? And if I'm going to do that, I have to be emotionally intelligent and wonderful myself. Now, it's not about perfection, but in this moment, so I started to feel it in my stomach, and then it kind of moved up to my chest. So what I did is I noticed it, and I was like, I took a deep breath, and I felt the energy. Now, what Angela's teaching me to do in this moment is I notice that energy and I welcome it. Okay? So most of the time we want to resist, we want to push it down, and then we react in a way that's not necessarily dealing with the emotion. It's just reacting in the same way that it's going to keep coming up and keep coming up. So I didn't want to spend so much time in triggers, but here's the last thing I'm going to say. So when you notice the energy, you can speak to it. And if this is woo-woo, it's okay, but you're here, you're probably a little woo-woo. When you notice that energy happening in your body, you welcome it and you love it. And you say, thank you for showing me where I need to heal. I love you. You're safe. Stay as long as you need. Okay? So you're literally speaking to this energy and you're creating space. Now, a lot of times you're going to be so triggered, you're just going to react, and that's okay. The first step is awareness. The second step, where is it happening in your body? Third step, take a deep breath. Fourth step, speak to that energy, welcome it, love it, okay? And what this does is it helps you process that energy and it helps it dissipate, okay? So if we can start to work with our triggers, this is going to directly, right, help us feel less guilty about responding in a way that we don't want to respond. Now that to me, that is the biggest form of mom guilt for me, is acting in a way that is not loving, that is not a good example, that is reactive and very, the response to the trigger. That's the biggest form of mom guilt. Now, what are some other so-called mom guilt triggers, right? Because this is persuasive. And the thing is like, we have these crazy expectations from society, media, family, friends. We talked about that a little bit. And what we do is we compare ourselves to other moms and we listen to all the advice from people of how we should mother. Now, this was the biggest trap that I found when I first had my child, my firstborn. So I had a C-section with Rylan because he was breech. I tried everything, and I just said, this is how he was going to be, and this is how he's going to come out. Well, I wish I would have tried a little bit more, but again, I'm not guilty about it, right? This is how he came into the world, is via C-section, and he just was really small, and I just felt like he could have been in there for a couple more weeks, right? Because this was a scheduled C-section. He wasn't like ready to come, we forced him out, and my C-section birth, I watch it every year on their birthdays. I watch their births, and Rylan's on the C-section is really, really, really disturbing, really disturbing. And so I'm like, okay, here he is already starting out with some child, baby trauma, birth trauma. We both are. And he was super colicky. And I hate that term, colicky, because it just is basically a term that doctors can use because they don't want to figure out what's wrong with your baby. And so I went down the Google dark hole, and I stayed there for a really long time, and I talk about this a lot in because I didn't have my mother. My mother was in Albuquerque. She was there for a short time when I first gave birth, but really she wasn't there. I had no family. My husband's family had their own lives. They lived far from us, and they have a lot of grandkids. So, we're kind of, late on the grandkids. So it's like, okay, when you first have your first grandkid, for most grandmas, they're like, yes. When they come to your 15th, you're like, another kid. I mean, they're all special, but it's just a different level of interest and excitement and that kind of thing. And my in-laws were amazing. But you know what? They worked and they were far from us. And I didn't have my aunts and my cousins and my sisters, my sisterhood, my womanhood around me to say, hey, listen, this is probably it, or you should try this, or let's do this. No, I had my doctor that basically told me to stop breastfeeding because my baby didn't like my milk. Oh my gosh. I mean, can you even imagine like a doctor telling a mom not to breastfeed? Like, it's ridiculous now. And so I just started to try all these things and I felt so guilty. I had this baby that literally cried non-freaking stop unless, okay? So finally, this is what happened. And my cousin was like, hey, you should try to like get like one of those big like workout balls. So I got the big workout balls and I was like sitting on it and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. And I would breastfeed and bounce this baby. And it was the only time he wouldn't effing cry. It's the only time he wouldn't cry. So I would bounce literally 8 to 9 hours a day. Now, the good thing was I lost a lot of weight. I lost my baby weight so fast because I was literally bouncing. I had to use my core all the time, holding this baby, engorged boobs, bouncing. And I was a human pacifier. Now, I had so much guilt because I could not do anything else but like with this baby. And then I would want to put him down just so I could go to the bathroom or go shower, and I would feel horrible. I felt like I was abandoning my child. Now, this is the thing, you guys. If we had our community, our village, we would know that this is normal, that these are things that other mothers have experienced, that you're not alone. And that's why we feel so guilty, because we feel so alone in this journey. And this is like my deep, deep wish and desire is that you know you're not alone. Everything you experience with your children, everything that you experience as a mother, other mothers feel and have experienced. Okay, I want you to know that. And this is why I want to share these kind of deep, dark, icky feelings with you, because if we don't talk about this, all you're going to get information from is like social media of like, you know, those beautiful, like perfect pictures of the babies when they're infants and they're wrapped up and they look so perfect and beautiful and the mother's all done up and you're like, shit, I haven't showered for like 3 weeks and you know, my baby cries all the time. I remember I took Rylan to try to do one of these baby shoots. I had a couple other friends that had had babies at the same time, and you know, they were bottle feeding and doing all these things. Oh my gosh, they were like going out partying, you know, a couple weeks after they had their baby. I was just like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. I was like, what the hell? You know, I can't even get dressed. I can barely eat. I can't even do laundry. This baby's attached to me and you're going out, you know, celebrating for your birthday with a newborn while your mom's watching it? Like what? And hey, if that's you, awesome. Whatever works for you, right? It doesn't matter. But I was comparing myself to this other mother who we completely parented different. Our values, our intentions, everything was different. And so that's the problem. So my friends who were, you know, having it all, they were doing great in this new motherhood thing, which I felt like I was failing miserably. Had all these cute baby shoots. So I try and take Rylan, right? And it's like the epitome of his colickiness. And I take him there and like, I swear the freaking photo shoot took like 4.5 hours. And at the end, I think we got like 2 shots. I was like, F this. He puked. He shit everywhere. You know, he was having to breastfeed. And I was just like, how do you do this? How do you make a living out of this? And so I felt like a horrible mom. I just felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And here's the thing. I think these unreasonable expectations of motherhood, of having to be happy, that's like, this is drilled into moms, right? This was drilled into me. I mean, even at 8 or 9 years old, I thought I was killing it being a mom to my little brother, right? Now, of course, that man didn't know that he forever traumatized me. Oh, it just makes me laugh. I mean, I really had this expectation I was going to be this amazing mom. And so now you can see like why depression postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety is so prevalent in moms because one, we don't have the support. We use Google to find out what's wrong with our babies, what's wrong with us, which leads us down a rabbit hole of information that is not good, right? And there's that placebo effect. So you start to believe these things that you're reading are true, and thus you're manifesting them in your life. We're going through these hormonal changes. We've never done this before, especially for first-time moms. I think that's where we really need the support. I think all moms, new moms need the support. I think all moms everywhere need support. And that was a huge reason why I came back to Albuquerque. I mean, I loved my life in Scottsdale. I loved it. The lifestyle, the food, the outside activities, the winters. I mean, it was magical. I loved it. I had amazing friends and family. My business was growing. But honestly, I couldn't do it all. And I needed help. I needed my mommy. So, the thing is I think we need to kind of see, like, how does mom guilt show up? So we know what it feels like, right? We know that it doesn't feel good. And I want you to know that every mother feels it, okay? And we feel guilty because we feel that it's our fault that we're not being, acting in a certain way that is in alignment with what everyone else thinks. But if we got back to ourselves, right, and we really said, like, what's important to us, right? What's important? And I had this beautiful talk with Amy Carney. She's wrote the book Parent on Purpose. She's amazing. She is also in the Holistic Mama Summit. She gave some incredible tools about and also a workbook to be intentional about what you want to create. And I think if we understand what it is that we want for our families, for our children, then we can create things and ways and what's the word? Rituals in our families that are in alignment with that. But if we're not clear on where we're going, then we're just going to kind of be like this, walking generality where we're just like, I don't know where I'm going. So first it's like, get clear, and the biggest thing is like, do you want to be healthy? That was a big thing for me. It's like, finally I realized, like, I want to be healthy. Like, I want my family to be healthy, but if I'm not healthy, how can I create a healthy family? Like, that's not lined up. And so, the thing is that this guilt and this, builds into resentment towards ourselves, towards our family, and brings up feelings of shame, right? And this drives our feelings, our thoughts, and our behaviors, and it shows up through depression and anxiety. And we start to feel down. We start to have fatigue. I remember going through like major fatigue. And it was really because I was expending so much energy in my mind through negative thinking, through not being the super mom I thought I was going to be, rather than giving myself grace and embracing this process. Which I know if I told you right now, like, give yourself grace and embrace the process, you'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever. My baby's crying all the time. I'm tired. I have extra weight. I'm isolated. You'd be like, F you. So I get that. I get it. It's not easy. But what I'm asking you to do is like sit with it, notice it, right? Get to where is that misalignment happening. And first of all, don't expect too much of yourself in the first year to 18 years of raising your children. Just don't have any expectations, okay? It's really like we have to give ourselves grace in a way, and we have to say, like, what's important to us, and is this way of being actually where I want to go? And so what's the first step to change? Awareness. Second, where does it show up in your body when you're doing what you don't want to do? And love that energy, process that energy. What happens is your mind begins to, your body heals, and then you start to create new neurological pathways of being. and of operating. And that's what you start to move towards. It's a beautiful process if we just allow it to be. Sometimes we just focus on the gap or the disparity between where we are and where we want to be. And then that just takes us into the deep, dark hole, right? It just reinforces not moving and staying the same. So this mom guilt can also come up in our negative thinking, right? I shouldn't go back to work. I should go back to work. I'm abandoning my baby. I'm a horrible mother. I'm not, I don't do this right. I didn't breastfeed enough, or maybe I breastfeed too much, or I don't want to breastfeed, but I'm breastfeeding. And it's like all this misalignment, because what happens is we start looking to everyone else and everything else for how we should be rather than going inside of our gut. And so other ways that the mom guilt shows up is we spend massive amounts of time on energy focused on social media. Because if we're only and you see this too, like if you see like new moms and they're always like posting like magical moments of their new baby, those are the ones I really feel for. I feel like they're the ones struggling the most because I feel like they're almost compensating for how horrible it is. I feel like that was me. I really just posted moments of when Riley, I never wrote like, oh my God, I hate being a mom. There's moments where I was like, what the fuck did I do? Why did I do this? I don't want to be a mom. And then there'd be other moments where, oh my gosh, I could never imagine not being a mom, right? I mean, it's okay to be bipolar about being a mom. It's okay. It's totally normal to love being a mother and hate being a mother sometimes. It's part of the process. I always say, if we really actually talked about how hard parenthood is, I don't know if we would procreate. I was never really told how hard motherhood was, or being a parent. It never, ever occurred to me that it was hard. Although I was a really tough child, so I don't really know why I didn't really put that two and two together. So, maybe your mom guilt is like you're overdoing, you're overworking, you're overscheduling, because what that does is that distracts us from the feelings that we're having. And the only way out is through, my friends, the only way out of these hard, difficult feelings is to actually feel and process them and free up that energy in our body. Okay. So I want you to know that. I want you to know that it's hard to feel, to process, to be with it. But it's really the only way that you can change and stop feeling those feelings, okay? Also numbing. This was a big one for me, you guys. I mean, I remember early on I was drinking a lot in motherhood. I really was. I mean, I kind of feel ashamed to say that. But now I love myself so much, and I love the mother I am and that I've become, that I know that it was part of my process and that I can maybe talk about it now. Laura McEwen is another speaker I'm going to be having on the Holistic Mama Summit. She wrote We Are the Luckiest. Such a great book. And it talks about sobriety and motherhood. And it really, really resonated with me. And the thing is maybe alcohol's yours. But maybe it's drugs, it's overspending, right? It's buying things to fill the void, the quick fix to feel better. Binge watching TV, or, it could be a lot of things. I mean, it's just numbing those feelings. That's why I'm like, you stop numbing and start feeling, okay? Start feeling. Be okay in the feeling, cry, process, get it, help the body work through that so that you can free up space, not only in your body, but your mental space to create what you want to create. Okay. And then this idea of perfectionism. And this is a big reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is I want to talk about the imperfectionism of life, of motherhood, because I'll tell you what, I mean, for most of the time you go on social media, you're like, oh, they're pretty much perfect. They're not. They're so imperfect. Everyone's struggling, and anyone that looks super perfect that's not willing to talk about their imperfectionism is really struggling. And I want you to know that as you're going through and you're scrolling. And one of the things that I've done too is I've taken out all the people and the feeds and stuff that are just like, I feel myself comparing to. Again, that's something we need to look at. Like if we're comparing ourselves, we need to be like, okay, where is this coming up? It's an insecurity. I don't feel like I'm enough. It has nothing nothing to ever do with the person, the experience, the circumstance, the content outside of you that's doing the triggering, that's creating that feeling of not enoughness. It's us. Okay? It's that belief that's being stimulated, that's reminding us, hey, I'm here. I need to be healed and processed so I don't need to keep coming up. That's why we love those parts of us. Okay? So what are some ways, I kind of talked a little bit about when mom guilt comes up is to sit with it, to see how is it manifesting in your body. So triggers and mom guilt's the same thing. What we can do is we can build resilience to it, right? So Brene Brown, I love it, is she talks about, beyond embracing these vulnerable feelings, we build resilience in the face of guilt, shame, and other difficult feelings. We build resilience, and we have to be courageous. And I feel like this lifestyle of living a more holistic, natural, hippie mom lifestyle takes so much courage because you are going against the grain. You are doing things that are different, and we can't hide from it. We have to be courageous. Let go of this idea of perfectionism. We have to take care of ourselves, right? We have to eat good. We have to sleep, exercise, meditate, and spend time with people that lift us up, not drag us down. So we build this resilience through processing these feelings, taking care of ourselves, knowing that we're not alone. All right? Forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for behaving in a way that is not in alignment with your higher self, with your higher way of how you want to raise your kids. A big thing that I love to talk about is when I feel really guilty, something that really helps is number one is I forgive myself. And I really look at that little Becky that was yelled at, that was told that she wasn't good enough, that she couldn't cry or whine or scream. She had to be calm and perfect all the time in order for her to be okay. I really imagine her when in my meditations, I hold little Becky so much and I love her. And I always see her in these moments of triggers and mom guilt, crying. And I just embrace her and I tell her I love her. And you can even, look at your trigger, that energy as your inner child speaking. And Angela uses this idea of cloaking that inner child, that energy with love, like a cloak of light, of love. And you're just dissipating that fire. You're just helping that energy know that it's safe and that you're okay. I mean, it's really beautiful work. It's not easy, you guys. It's not, this whole lifestyle is not easy. But if it's the hard easy or the easy hard. We talked about this. You do what's hard now to make your life easier in the future, right? Eating healthy, meditating, exercising, taking care of yourself, right? Not numbing out, dealing with hard feelings and emotions. That's hard. But do you think the future will be brighter because you do it? Now listen, I know, and I'm not judging, okay? But I know a lot of moms that take the easy route, right? They give their kids whatever they want to eat. Whenever their kid's upset, they make it better, right? And whatever the kid wants, they get. Now, these kids that I know are really struggling with health issues, eating disorders, developmental delays, asthma, autism spectrum. Now, I'm not blaming these mothers. They don't know any different, you guys. They don't know. And that's why, we can't look at other moms and be like, oh, you're a bad mom. Hell no, they're not a bad mom. They're just doing the best they can, right? So it's easy to do that way, but it's going to make a hard future. And that's why, why we need so much support and love in this lifestyle. We need to hold each other up and encourage each other. Not preach, but just have that space for moms. That's why I love the Hippie Mom community. If you guys are not in Hippie Mom community on Facebook, you have to go there. I'll make sure I'll put the link there. But please join us. That's why we created it. I mean, we just had a post. I love this. The post was from a mom exclusively breastfeeding. And she asked, is it normal that her baby hasn't pooped in 4 days? And everyone's like, yes, it's totally normal. I mean, could you imagine Like being a mom and your kid's not pooping and you have no idea, but now you have a community. You can ask questions and get all these moms that say things and talk about it. And this was my experience. How freaking beautiful is that? That's our village. That's our tribe now. That's what it's come to because we don't have that physical interaction. This is the next best thing, you guys. All right. So what I hope you got out of this podcast is to lighten the load in the mom guilt category, okay? Start to notice when you feel guilty, those triggers, start to love yourself, embrace that energy, feel it, and really start to understand what your values are. Now, one thing I know how it really helps me work through the mom guilt, one of the biggest things I have mom guilt of is my kids are on too much screen time, okay? The next thing is I don't spend enough quality time with my kids. So do you see how that works? My kids are on screen time too much and I don't have enough time with my kids. So here's what I've done. This has been a very big one for me for a very long time, especially in times of COVID, you guys, especially in times of COVID. And so here's what I want to leave you with. These are the actions I took, okay? Now, I'm going to say this is hard. I don't really want to do this, but we take 2 days out of the week where we have no devices at all. And we spend time together. Or the kids just play. And then on the weekends, I slow down. I sit down with my kids. I play the games they want to, whether it's board games or throwing the football. No imaginary play. I hate imaginary play. My son Ryder, he's like, Mom, you're really good at building Legos, but you're really bad at playing Legos. I'm like, I know, because I hate imaginary play, and I'm okay with that. It's okay if you don't want to sit down. Right? Maybe that's a form of your mom guilt. You don't want to sit down and play Barbies with your daughter, play little army men with your son. Like, no, nobody wants to do that. And maybe if you do, God bless you. But if you don't worry. I don't either. I hate it. So you just find things that I love how Amy Carney calls it your playground. What's your playground? What do you like to do? I like to play board games. I like to play card games. I like to cook with my kids. I like to hike. I like to go on walks. I like to go to the park. Those are things I love to do. I don't like to sit down and pretend like, Iron Man is killing, Spider-Man Lego. Like, gag me with a fork. Okay, this is becoming a long podcast. I hope that you walk away from this podcast feeling like you're not alone, that you have everything within you to be the mother that you want to be, and that it's part of the healing process to notice, be aware, feel, process, and love those parts of you, and then start to become intentional. What do you want to create? And then implement little steps. That's the best thing you can do when you feel overwhelmed or you feel guilty. Make action steps. Create things that you can do to start to create what you want, right? What those intentions that are in alignment with that. Okay. I love you all. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have this podcast to speak my heart and to connect with you. I guess I will catch you on the next Hippie Moms podcast. I love you. Goodbye.